Why America is blindly walking into a trap in Iran. Professor Yang, I don't know how to say his last name. I don't want to look like a fool up here. Hey man, look, if you got some hypes to spare, I need them like a crackhead need a pipe. Let's get into this video.
We continue our discussion of the US-Iran war that is happening right now. So, as you know, I made the prediction that the United States will lose this war. In last class, we did an overview of the military and strategic position. And today, we're going to provide some theoretical framework for how to understand how this war will progress and why ultimately I believe the United States will lose this war.
Hey, that's a big claim to be claiming, man. You know, the United States got the largest military, the most powerful, most technologically advanced military on the face of the earth, so they say. So that's a big claim. That's a bold claim.
Today, I present to you a very important idea in game theory. And once you understand this idea, then you understand why things will turn out the way they do. Okay, it's called a law of asymmetry. Okay, law of asymmetry. And all this is saying is that the United States and Iran are not peers. They're not equals. The United States is far stronger than Iran.
Facts.
And we should expect the United States to overwhelm and destroy Iran really easily. But the law of asymmetry states that that's usually not the case. It's usually the underdog that has the advantage.
Yeah, bro. I guess the best example I could give is Vietnam War, bro. Obviously, the Vietnamese, they were the underdogs, but they was putting belt to ass with straight guerrilla warfare. In the, was that the 60s or the 70s? I forget exactly when that was. But man, if you go down that rabbit hole and you listen to people who actually were there, the stories, they had one female there who was known to kill, and she didn't take no prisoners, dog. Real talk. They said, bro, U.S. soldiers were instructed to not use all of their bullets when they were in this particular region, because if they got caught by this lady, she was going to torture them to death. So they kept one round in the gun so that if they were caught, they could.
And we see this from history all the time. Okay, so when the Persians in about 490 BC invaded mainland Greece against Athens and Sparta, Persia at that time was the first world empire. It had infinite resources, infinite manpower, infinite wealth. And it lost to the Greeks not once, but twice. And then the Macedonians under Alexander the Greek, and they were like a tribal army, not a very large army. They were able to go into Persia, and Persia at the time was basically most of Eurasia, and conquered it in about 10 years' time. The Romans started off as a tribal people, which then built the Mediterranean Empire. Then you had the Aztecs, so the Vikings. So this happens a lot in human history. A people in the borderlands, a tribe, a small ethnicity, are able to conquer a great empire. And the law of asymmetry tells us why.
Okay, talk to me, Professor.
So I'm going to go over very slowly in detail how this law of asymmetry works. All right, so let's look at an empire. And there are three major advantages to an empire.
This guy's a good speller.
All right, the first is mass. This just means that they have a lot of people. Okay, they almost have an infinite amount of people. The United States has a population of about 350 million people. But remember, the United States can also draw on the populations of its allies, which includes the Five Eyes, the Anglosphere, but it also includes Europe. It also includes East Asia, South Korea, Japan, basically wherever the Americans have a military base. Right? So most of the world are either allies of the United States or vassals of the United States. So the United States can basically draw on in billions and billions of people for its wars. Okay, so it's mass. Second is the idea of organization. Organization just means a hierarchy of bureaucracy and elite that allows you to organize your resources and your people in order to generate wealth, which is basically science and technology, okay? Science and technology. which leads to the most advanced weaponry. Okay, so think about the United States, how they fight this war. They have these satellites that provide for precision targeting. They have these airplanes, these B-2 bombers, F-15s, that are the most advanced weaponry ever in human history. Okay, so organization. And the last great strength of the empire is the idea of death. Death is the idea that because your people are infinite, because your organization is so strong, because your resources are so vast, you can afford to lose many, many wars, okay? It's not a big deal if the United States loses this war in Iran. If they want to go back, they can go back with even more soldiers, even more weaponry, because their wealth is infinite, okay? So these are the three major advantages of an empire. And in theory, because of these advantages, an empire should be invincible and eternal.
But like y'all saw, the examples that he gave and the one example that I gave, bro, like it don't always work out that way. Sometimes the smaller dog got more fight in it than the bigger dog. And I think he's probably going to get into that because I know that the Iranian soldiers, they're not like the American soldiers. Now, the American soldiers probably have superior training, right? They probably got the most technologically advanced training that they could possibly receive, but they ain't got the heart that the Iranians got, because the Iranians, they believe in something bigger than just going to the military to get financial gain like most people go to the military for. And that's not to take no shot at no veteran. I salute y'all. I swear to God I do. But what I'm saying is, nigga, why did you go and join the military? Let's be fucking for real. If you're from the inner city of America, you probably joined because you felt like that was the best option for you. Who grows up saying, you know what, I want to be a Marine? That's coming from the black community. Let's be real. Are there going to be outliers? Yes. But by and large, I don't think most of y'all are willing to go and put your life on the line for America without getting something in return. And all I'm saying is that the Iranians, they are willing to do that because they think it's something noble. They think it's something bigger than them. It's all about religion. It's all about legacy. It's all about, duty to their country. It ain't like, I'm not trying to shit on Americans. I'm not doing that, y'all. But what I'm saying is, it's differences.
But we know for a fact that all empires fall, and they fall very, very hard. And quite honestly, they don't last a very long time. Maybe 28 years, maybe 30 years for most empires. That's not a very long time. So we need to better understand what's going on, okay? Why is it that an empire with these vast resources, they all fall in 20 years, 30 years, okay? All right.
Quick side note, at least once a day, I get a comment or an email asking, how do I do this YouTube thing? How do I make reaction videos? If you're interested in making money on YouTube and not just arguing in the comment sections, I run a private YouTube growth group. We do weekly calls, live channel audits, and you get to see how other creators are making money, plus how I got this channel to where it's at 37,000 today when it only had 3,000 in October, and how I plan on making this channel go to 100K before the end of the year. Link in the description.
So what we need to understand is that all these advantages are ultimately disadvantages in the long term. All right, so let me explain what I mean. Mass, you have a lot of people, okay? When you have a lot of people, you create a lot of inequality. Why? Because there's competition for resources. There's too many people, okay? And this often leads to debt and slavery. And as a result, your people become complacent, lazy, indifferent. They're competing against each other. They really don't like the government, okay? So they're not really that motivated to do anything, to work or to fight wars, but especially to fight wars.
Didn't I just say that?
So this mass looks like an advantage in the beginning, but over time it becomes a disadvantage, right? Organization means an elite. The problem with this is that over time the elite become parasites. Why? Because the way they make their money is through rent seeking. Rent seeking just means that you have power and you seek to monetize your power by exploiting the mass. All right? So basically landlords. are a classic type of rent-seeking elite. And so they don't really work, but they make a lot of money because they own the land, because they control all the resources, because they control all the capital. And that forces the mass to go into slavery, to go into debt, which is what's happening in America today.
Hey, he ain't lying. And go watch this video right here. We go over that shit, bro. Billionaires don't want us to own no houses, bro.
The problem with this is that everyone wants to be part of the elite, and there are too many elite over time. Okay? So even though the elite have many kids, the power is a zero-sum game. It's a hierarchy. And so this leads to the idea of elite overproduction. Okay? Elite overproduction. This is a term coined by the historian Peter Turchin. Okay? And his theory is that you have turmoil, you have wars, for example, the French Revolution, for example, the fall of the Roman Republic, because there's too many elite and they start wars to accumulate power for themselves.
Yep.
Okay?
Donald Trump is doing that right now.
Organization, this elite, leads to basically factionalism or infighting. And that's what's happening in America today, where the Democrats and the Republicans, they hate each other, they refuse to get along. It leads to political polarization, okay? So another way of saying this is that an empire over time becomes insular. They don't care about what happens outside the world. All they care about is what happens in Washington, D.C. And as a result, they make a lot of stupid mistakes, okay? All right, now the last thing is death. Okay, the problem with death is that if there are no consequences to your actions, you become arrogant, you become lazy, and you become incompetent, okay? Because you don't care. It doesn't really matter. And this leads to the idea of hubris. Okay? Hubris is just blindness to your own arrogance, a violent arrogance that makes you make silly mistakes, but you don't recognize your mistakes and you keep on repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Right? So, yes, it's...
So, am I following right, bro? He's talking about like Iraq, Afghanistan, and going into Iran is like doing that all over again. How did that work out? That shit was a decade long when they said it would only be 6 weeks, 6 months. I doubt 6 months. That's what they said. And we're going right back into this mistake again. And then you got a lot of people who are like, man, America got the biggest, baddest, strongest army in the world. We can't possibly get fucked up. Man, your ass ain't signed up to go be troops on the ground.
Seems like the empire is invincible, but if you actually think about it, the empire, its advantages becomes over time its disadvantages, which will lead ultimately to its downfall. Okay? So the mass leads to inequality, the organization leads to overproduction, which leads to factionalism, and death leads to hubris. That's why an empire must fall over time. But an empire cannot fall by itself. It needs an enemy that forces it to collapse.
Ooh-wee.
Okay? And so what happens is that an enemy will emerge that will overwhelm the empire because it is able to take advantage of the weaknesses of the empire. Right? And so what are the weaknesses of this empire? Well, the first major weakness of this empire is that the people aren't really motivated. So if you as people are really motivated, you have a huge advantage, okay? We call this energy. Alright? Now, as an empire, you become insular. You refuse to admit your mistakes. You refuse to learn from others. Well,
sounds like
if
America.
You are willing to admit your mistakes, if you're willing to learn, if you're willing to promote the best and brightest, if you're willing to be meritocratic, you have a huge advantage, okay? And so this idea of openness. Now, the last idea is this. An empire, it's fractured. So if you're able to maintain cohesion, if people are able to remain united, if they're able to have a common purpose, they'll be strong, okay?
So in other words, a homogenous group of people is always going to be a heterogeneous group of people. In other words, when you got people who are all on the same boat, and they're trying to get to the same destination, they are more likely to succeed than people who can't get their shit together. And that's why in the black community, I feel like we fall short a lot of time because we got so many, like, black people are not a monolith. If we were, we probably get some shit done, but we're not. So many people got different ideologies, different mindsets, different income classes, different ways they were brought up, different religions within black folks, bro. It'll be hard to get every black American on the same page, dog. And that's why we can't really get nothing done, because you want to do it your way. Man, I'm from New York and I ain't going to listen to you country bumpkins. Well, I ain't going to listen to you city slickers either. This is the shit that divides us, bro. So other countries that we would call communist countries, they all get on one accord and get shit done. It might not be pretty. It might not happen overnight. But I'm telling you, that's how China came up so fast in the early 1900s, dog, because they got on the same page. China would say, listen, this whole country, we move into electric cars. And guess what? Every car manufacturer in China has to start making electric cars. Ain't going to be I'm going to keep making gasoline cars because that's what I want to do. No, it don't work like that. Everybody in that country got to get on the same page. And in doing so, they become a superpower, bro. Straight up. They come together and they get on the same page. They be having these 5-year plans, these 10-year plans. I think right now they just had the 15th meeting for a 5-year plan. And them 5-year plans, bro, they almost always execute. At least they say they do. You know, they be smudging the numbers and shit. But still, America isn't like that, bro. You got whites versus blacks. You got white folks that don't like Hispanics. You got Hispanics that don't like blacks. It's just everybody's divided.
So if an enemy of the empire emerges with these three qualities, energy, openness, and cohesion, this enemy will defeat the empire. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So what I want you to focus on as you follow the news in this war between the United States and Iran is ask yourself a question. Will Iran become an energetic, open, and cohesive society? Because if it does, it will become invincible. The empire won't change because of hubris. It's too static. It's too stagnant. It's too bureaucratic. So the empire won't change. The empire will not admit its own mistakes. And quite honestly, Iran, because it's still a country of 92 million people, it still suffers from issues of mass organization and death. And so if it's able to transform itself into an energetic, open, and cohesive society, then it will triumph over America. That is the fundamental question in this war, okay? Don't worry about America, its technology. Don't worry about the economy. Don't worry about these things, okay? Just ask yourself one question. Is Iran transforming as a society? Are people becoming much more motivated?
All I'm going to say is you ain't going to see no Iranian soldiers doing TikTok dances and looking all crazy in the videos. You're not going to see that. They believe in the fight. Americans are, by and large, going into the fight because they have to. They're being instructed to do so. They don't have a say in the matter. And I'm not saying Iranian soldiers have a say in the matter either, but they believe in what they're fighting for. Man, Americans ain't going over there because they believe in this damn fight. They're going because they have to. Donald Trump sent the order. It's that simple.
Are people in Iran learning from their mistakes and innovating and becoming resilient on the battlefield? Are the Iranians sticking together as a people? Okay? Because if the answer is yes to all three questions, then Iran will win and America will lose. Okay? Does that make sense?
The answer is yes. I think the answer is 100% yes to all of those questions. Whenever a king sees that his people are about to revolt against him, he starts a war with another country. Napoleon Bonaparte. Damn. I'd give anything to live in a society where this kind of knowledge was valued instead of condemned. I swear, if you go to Facebook and let a MAGA head person read anything you say as of what you learned from this video, they are going to discount it. USA elite are definitely parasites on the taxpayer, definitely. And you know, they give the taxpayers the tax cuts. I'm sorry, they give these corporations the tax cuts. I'm talking about trillions of dollars that could be used to build out infrastructure in this country, to pay for healthcare, to get quality education so that we can compete on a global scale. But man, fuck all that. Why invest in the people? Hell no. What sense does that make, investing into our citizens? Remember, kids, this war started because your elite couldn't keep their hands off children and they got blackmailed. Ooh wee. I'm with you when you're right. The weak win by not losing. The strong lose by not winning. That's over my head. The fascinating yet incredibly terrifying realizing the "you are here" moment. Gotta love his subtle okays. Welcome to the end of the world. Okay. I mean, he really just be throwing it in there, dog, with no like emotions or nothing. It's just straight cold hard facts. I work 60 hours a week and most of my check is taken in taxes, and they just burned $7 billion in the first day. Say, bruh, that'll piss you off when you put it in perspective like that. Hubris is a synonym of pride, which comes before fall. This is a classic lecture in social psychology. Shout out to him for that. You are all over TV in the USA, professor. Thank you for the videos. America isn't wealthy enough to sustain the greed of his wealthy. Oh, wow. That's a bar too. Epstein cover up gone too far. It's scary how correct he's been calling out things before they happen. Literally game theory playing out in real time. Watching this dude's channel makes me miss being in university. School is awesome. You get to just sit down and learn for like 2-3 hours. Ask all the questions you want, etc. Now, I ain't have time to ask my professors all them damn questions, even during office hours, man. It was piled up in there. But guys, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Shout out to Professor Yang. Hit me with the hypes, man. If you got something to spare, I need them like a crackhead need a pipe. Holla at your boy.